Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles people who are passionate about what they do for a living, what organization they belong to, or the community they are a part of. Here is your host, Dave Cunningham.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to talk retirement in this episode. Traditionally, retirement involves picking a point in your life when you decide to wrap up a career, change your lifestyle, travel, focus on an activity you didn't have enough time for when you were working, spending more time with your family. This conversation is just one person's journey, moving from decisions about post-secondary made as a high school student in St. Agathe, Quebec, to packing up and relocating to North Bay, Ontario, to help his son build a business some 50 years later. Our guest is Dan MacWhirter. He and I worked in the same office for about a decade, retired from that career within about 5 years of each other, and from there took different paths. I thought it would be interesting to explore a different passion. Here is our conversation with Dan MacWhirter. Dan, welcome.
David, I'm thrilled to be here.
It's been a long time since you and I had the chance to talk.
We used to have offices side by side.
That's right.
And we would visit from time to time. And yeah, it's been a while, and I'm really happy I had a chance to see you today.
Now, full disclosure for those listening, Dan and I worked together for several years, and we'll get to that a bit later on. We also want to remind our listeners that this episode of the Kingstonian podcast is being recorded in late December 2022, and I guess I should take the opportunity to wish you compliments of the season.
Best of the season to you as well.
Okay. If you are a regular listener to the program, you know that this podcast focuses on folks with passions.
Right.
Now, I know you have passions.
Yep.
Several of them, and we'll get to those in a bit. But first, we'll talk about one that you don't appear to have as a passion, and that's conventional retirement. Fair to say?
I think so. I think that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing as long as it's fun to do for as long as I can. Right. Right now, I'm in an environment where I manage my own hours. I work from home. I work from the offices. I get to do what I want to do when I want to do it, and I have a lot of support by the balance of the owner and the management team and stuff. So it's not like work. It's sitting down and having coffee and talking to people.
Right. Exactly.
Much like you do. Where's my coffee?
Yeah, I thought you would have brought one. Anyway. One of the things I thought it would be interesting to chat a little bit about, you and I both retired from the same place roughly around the same period of time. And I know that when I was contemplating and talking about retiring, people would come up and say, so are you going to work part-time? Are you, what are you going to do after you leave here? Are you going to work? Did you have the same sort of questions being thrown your way? And what was your thought process as you were moving away from that career before the current one?
The thing I wanted to accomplish was to provide my clients with no fear. Like this is what's going to happen. This is where I'm going to be. This is who's going to be looking after you now. And trust me, it's somebody I hired and I trained and I developed. And she has a lot of natural skills, so you're going to be well looked after. That's part one. Part two is I'm going to work for her for a year. And we're going to have an opportunity to see if there are things we need to work on or work towards. And if so, we'll make changes come what may.
Once you laid all of that out, did you have any sense that you were going to sit back, put your feet up, engage in hobbies that you may have had on the side, and just relax? Or was that not in the cards for you?
I think I may have had that concept, just sit back and chill, but it never really happened. There just seemed to be things to do, people to talk to, experiences to experience. So sitting back and just watching the world go by never really seemed like an alternative. And as you're engaged in stuff, the higher the likelihood that you're going to be happier, and more productive, and more gregarious, and all of those things, because you're actually doing stuff versus sitting around and watching Crave TV.
I know that you and I are roughly in the same age bracket, so the same thought went through my mind. And from my perspective, I was prepared to retire. I wanted to retire. I had a lot of different activities I was doing on the side for nonprofits and stuff to keep me busy, but I never felt the need to go back to work. And we'll get to the reason why you went back to work in a minute. Let's go back to the beginning, because I find that the beginning gives you some sense as to where you are today in terms of has a big role to play. So you came from a town in Quebec called Saint-Agathe.
Saint-Agathe-des-Monts.
And that's where you grew up for the most part.
Grew up for the most part.
Tell us about Saint-Agathe for those who may not be aware.
It's a great little place. Population triples in the summertime. Tourists. There is one English school, grades 1 through 11, and it has 200 kids. And it is the neatest little school you ever saw. It's got everything you need. It's got the classrooms and labs and all of those things. It's just so well put together. Lots of things to do if you like to ski, which I don't. You could go skiing or tobogganing. Lots of winter stuff. That's pretty well about it. There wasn't a lot of other things. It was a village where you could leave your car keys in the car.
Never mind leaving your door unlocked.
Right. Yeah. Never mind leaving your door unlocked. 'Cause that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
Where are the keys? It's there in the car. Duh. Right. Oh, okay. I got it now.
Logical place to have them. Yeah.
It's also a residence for some very affluent Anglophones from Montreal. That have summer houses.
How far is it from Montreal, would you say, Saint-Agathe?
It's about an hour and a quarter.
Okay.
But there are people who are very affluent. My affluent story has to do with I used to babysit a lot growing up. So there was a bit of a captive audience with the families that would come up, and they all had houses that were on the point. Green Shields Point is the name of the peninsula that you had to get permission to buy the house on. You had to meet with the board. But I was babysitting, and there was myself and another lady, and I was looking after the two kids I was looking after. And the other lady was looking after John F. Kennedy's kids.
Oh, really?
Who happened to be in the Laurentians visiting with friends, and all of the teenagers all got off and went and did stuff. So this lady that babysat the Kennedy's kids, the nanny wasn't needed for anything. And I just got to hang out with the kids that I normally hung out with, and Secret Service guys running around in the bushes and all sorts. It was really cool.
Well, doesn't the Clinton family have some place in Quebec that they go and visit?
I don't know that.
I think so, but I don't know where it is.
I do know that Elton John's husband has a place that's not far from Kingston, and that's why whenever Elton John is on tour, he actually plays in Kingston, because he's got family to visit and stuff.
Somewhere in Prince Edward County, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. You decided at one particular point you wanted to go to RMC.
Correct. So I can remember one of the jobs my dad had was checking on some of the houses that, just to make sure that they were winterized properly and well put together. And we went into this one house, and one whole wall was full of dinky toys. And not the little ones, the big ones. And they were all military dinky toys. And I looked at that and I went, wow, that looks really cool. And that introduced me to my foray into the military. Had my own collection of dinky toys. And it intrigued me. It gave me, I certainly understand, doing for your country, and I have nothing but respect for the people who have been in the program, right? Because it's hard. It's a difficult school to attend. It's a difficult school to graduate. I can remember the first meeting with the director of cadets. He sat us down and he looked at the whole first year class and he said, look to your left, look to your right. In 4 years, there will only be one of you here. And that's the nature of the business, mm-hmm. right? So I did that, and I'd had interest in military. It was just something that I thought was really cool.
So you came to Kingston, enrolled at RMC, and at some particular point decided that you and mathematics didn't get along all that well.
Correct. So I needed something else to do. So one of the advantages of living in a small, high-end town is people know people. And I was talking to my dad about, what am I going to do? And he said, just a sec. And he made a phone call and he came back and he said, I was just talking to the CEO at Alcan. You have an interview next week. And I went, wow. Is that how this world works? Well, frankly, yes, that's how this world works. Mm-hmm. I went in to see the interview, met with the HR manager, personnel manager. He had not been clued in as to anything. So I'm talking to him, and it's a terrible interview. And he says, we'll be in touch. And he leaves. And I'm finished with the interview, and I'm going, oh, that wasn't fun. So I talked to my dad a couple of days later, and he said, have you talked to the interviewee from Alcan? I went, no. He said, just a minute. 20 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was the HR manager from Alcan. Oh, Mr. MacWhirter, we're so sorry. We did. Nobody told. So I toured Alcan twice in English, once in French. And what I wanted them to do is I wanted them to send me to university, finish off my degree. Mm-hmm. They had different plans, called Kitimat. Kitimat is in the middle of BC. You only can get at that point you could only get your car there by train. And I decided, I don't think that's what I want to do. I'm still going to look for something else. And I started to work for McDonald's. And I had worked for A&W a little bit when I was growing up. But I was going to work for McDonald's until a real job came along. 10 years later, general manager, 5 stores, millions of dollars in sales. I can't remember the exact numbers, and I don't want to sound boastful. 700 staff.
How old were you when you started at McDonald's?
I think I was probably about 23.
Okay.
With a little bit of restaurant experience, not lots and lots.
Now, if folks listening know anyone who's ever worked at McDonald's, they are aware of some of the benefits of doing so. Describe in your mind some of the benefits that can be had for those who are lucky enough to get a job at McDonald's. It's
an opening to a wide variety of different possibilities. There's educational courses. There are training programs. There are just simply a wide variety of things you have an option of attending if that is your wish, right? And if you're not interested, you're going to quickly get tired of flipping burgers and leave and go someplace else. But the key to being successful at McDonald's is to realize that it's an introduction and an introduction and an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself and the world around you.
So you've spent 10 years at McDonald's. You are a manager, been very successful,
right.
And at some point you decide, well, I want to try something else.
Right. So what had happened was the owner and I were having a difference of opinion. And I said to him, can I see you in your office at 10 o'clock Monday morning? And he went, yes. I went in and I saw him and I said, I want to give you a heads up. I'm done. I'll stick around as long as you need me. I know you've got succession planning to do. I will commit to giving you the 100% of what I can do, right? I'm not going to just diddle-daddle around. And he went, okay. 2 weeks later, I got notice that my job was finished, so I handed in my company car. And I went, see ya, bye. And then started looking for something else. I looked at an armored car company. I thought that would be like driving tanks. No, not quite the same. Gas bar. Starting my own business. There's a chain of sandwiches in Toronto called Select Sandwich. And I looked at that as being a franchisee. And there was a cash flow concern. So I was introduced to Gord Bellier. And Gord Bellier used to be the manager of Canada Trust downtown. And he introduced me to somebody, and the next thing you know, they're offering me a position. And I said, well, it's a trainee position, right? Oh, no, we're going to have you the savings manager of the main floor. Yeah, but I can barely balance my checkbook. We're not hiring you to balance your checkbook. We're hiring you for all of the other soft skills that you bring to the job, right? So I was doing some goofy things when it was really busy. This is before bank machines. And when it was really busy, I'd have a handful of receipts and my pen, and I'd say, okay, in line, who just wants to make a deposit? And I'd make up the receipt and give them the deposit, and they'd give me the check, and then 20 minutes later, the lineup was all done, and then I'd give the checks off to somebody else who would actually enter the transaction and post the transactions, and the tellers are going, what's he doing? He's providing excellent customer service, he's getting the lineup beat down, all of those things. And there was an opportunity with the Canada Trust model to be experimental when it came to that stuff, right? You could do whatever you wanted to do as long as you were successful about it and it wasn't a surprise. So that's one of the reasons I enjoyed that business line as much as I did.
Was that business of being able to experiment a little something that you really liked about working there?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
We had a model, myself and two other branch managers setting up, we'd call a sales admin split. So what we did is if you have a pool of 10 people and you say to these 10 people, how many people like sales? Half of them will put up their hand. How many people hate sales? The other half will put up their hand. So our commitment was, if you like sales, we're going to put you into a sales job. If you hate sales, we're going to put you into an admin job. Are you okay with that? And they thought we were just died and gone to heaven, right? Finally getting an opportunity to do what they wanted to do and capitalize on their strengths. So as a result, our results went through the roof. Because there's nothing worse than a grumpy admin person wanting to deal with opening a bank account for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After about 18 years at TD Canada Trust, you decided to move over to Investors Group.
Correct.
What was the carrot that got you interested in that?
Again, being a big believer in self-determination, I found that the model that I was working in wasn't the model I got hired to do, right? It had different parameters that I wasn't thrilled with. For example, if on the Canada Trust side, you had only $8,000 in losses and $50,000 in savings, they would let you offset your losses by your savings to have you move forward. On the TD side, if it was like if I had $8,000 in losses and $1 million in savings, I was a bum because I had $8,000 in losses, right? So it's just the different philosophy about how they wanted to run their shop. And I met some amazing people, who worked on both sides. It's just, that's the way it was.
So this goes back to the time when the TD Bank purchased or absorbed Canada Trust.
We prefer to call it a reverse takeover.
A reverse takeover. That's from the Canada Trust guy.
That's right. Absolutely.
So you move over to Investors Group, and what did you like about being there?
All of a sudden, I went from being in charge of 30 staff to being in charge of 1 staff. All of a sudden, I had an opportunity to demonstrate and to work through behavior that my clients, my clients were looking for. So it became like solving individual puzzles. This is your puzzle. Here are your pieces. Here's how it fits together. What do you think? Yeah. If you follow this is what will happen. If you follow this is what will happen. And does that sound okay? When I left the bank, I didn't take a list. I didn't take names. I didn't take any of that stuff. And people would come to me, find me out because of the relationships that I had built with them over time.
Yeah.
And as we continued to grow, it was that opportunity to help. One of my favorite stories is I had a gentleman who came in and said, Dan, there's something wrong with my statement. And I said, really? What's wrong with your statement? There's too much money there. What do you mean there's too much money there? Well, look at here. This is how much money I've never had that much money. And I went, well, no, you never had that much money, but you put aside that much money over the last couple of years because we did this and this and this and this and this. And his face just lit right up. Wow, right? It's the ability to offer experiences like that I found was really, really appealing to me.
Mm-hmm. So as we mentioned at the outset, you and I both worked there around the same time. And I agree with you that probably one of the best things was, and one of the most successful things people can do is build a relationship with the person who is handling their money, regardless of where they are in terms of institution. But that's the key to actually building wealth in the long run, I believe, anyway. So you're getting to the point where you are near what would be conventional retirement age.
Correct.
And I believe you did actually retire for a little bit, but you were still volunteering in the community.
Correct.
And you worked with the folks at Hospice Kingston, which is, explain what Hospice Kingston is for those who may not know.
Hospice Kingston is where you go to die. And that sounds really harsh, but the care and support you would get from the staff and the volunteers and the environments that you were in, it took a terrible situation and made it as good as it possibly could, right? What's happening now is hospice, and I may be wrong here, but I'm going to give it a whirl anyway. Hospice is now being taken over by Providence Manor, and it's going into Providence Village, which is a brilliant, brilliant idea the sisters had. But it's that opportunity to make things a little bit smoother, a little bit easier, a little bit sunnier, as sunny as it can be, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you're involved in helping raise funds to build the building.
That's correct.
Right.
The building the funds were almost built. The funds were almost gathered. There's still some, again, this is a couple of years ago, so I can't quote numbers, but progress is being made, and that's great.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, you're still in Kingston.
At this point, I'm still in Kingston, yeah.
And you get a phone call from your son.
And I get a phone call from my son, and he says, Dad, what are you doing? I'm going,
I've got my feet up. And
I'm watching TV, right? So he said, what do you think? Let's open a McDonald's. And I went, okay. I've done that before. So I've got some marketing experience. I understand how it works. He got tired of trading hours for dollars. So I said, yeah. And we got together and we started working on a plan. The process to buy McDonald's is a 2-year process. It involves training. It involves visiting markets. It involves talking and listening to other owner-operators. It involves a myriad of items. And it's interesting, is one of the guys that was looking after the program was a gentleman that had worked for me when I was at McDonald's, which was kind of interesting. So, small little village we live in.
So Colin goes on and does something else entirely.
Correct? Yep.
And what was he doing generically?
Information technology management.
Okay.
He would be part of a team of 12 guys or 12 people who would go down into a market, and there was a tool that they were introducing and developing that would let the chief information officer know exactly where all of his IT projects were on track.
Okay.
And he would tell me what he's doing beyond that, and my eyes would glaze. Going, oh, okay, that sounds like fun. Okay, good.
So how did his path get back to McDonald's?
He had always been a firm McPerson, right? He decided that he was tired of working and trading dollars for hours. So he wanted to do something that was going to help him continue to be successful and grow and thrive. And then you start the process, and you start talking to people, and you start talking to VPs and chat, and it moves onwards. And as I say, it took about 2 years. And finally, he got to the point where McDonald's has said, okay, you're in. Now we're going to wait for a store for you. Mm-hmm. So when you go to work for McDonald's, you work where they tell you. You don't say, I want downtown Kingston as my branch.
Yeah.
No, it probably belongs to somebody else. Sorry, Todd. It belongs to Todd. I know Todd. So you can't just say this is what you want, right? They'll decide what's best. And that's just the way they play the game. So anyway, they came up and said to Colin, we have a four-store market for you in North Bay. Would you be interested? And you can always say no. Mm-hmm. But if you say no, you may not get another opportunity to say no or yes. Right. So if this is what McDonald's says, the trick is then to make the best of it, right? Go in and start examining the market and the restaurants and what needs to be changed and what needs to be revised and all of those things in order to make everybody happy, healthy, and more wealthy.
What was it like working with family? Or what is it like working with family?
I have to make an appointment with him to meet with him. But I think it's funny, but he's got a very structured, very busy day. Mm-hmm. So if I want to sit down and meet, I book the appointment, we book them electronically, then we finally get together. And I've said to him, I said, if it ever comes to a chance where you need to reschedule, I will only tell you if something's urgent, if it is urgent. And if it's not urgent, we can reschedule. That's not really a big deal, right? That's pretty straightforward. It's like some of the events that we're doing and some of the stuff for contests we're running. So we'll just move that way. And we get together on a regular basis outside of restaurants because the first couple of months when we're working together, we would be off doing our own little thing, and then we'd come back at the end of the day all frustrated because our own little things weren't working, and we were sharing our own little things all over again.
Yeah.
So it got to the point that we decided, well, you know what? We're not going to do this, right? It's not providing comfort. It's not providing peace. It's not providing warmth. Let's not talk about work at anywhere else except work. Mm-hmm. So that worked out in that regard. And we still have to make appointments to see him.
Okay, so neither of you have ever lived in North Bay, and you move into North Bay to take over a business.
Yep.
And you're basically, from your own perspective, starting from scratch as people
Very
involved with McDonald's. So the concept of going into a town you don't know at all.
Yep.
So I gather that most of the introduction to the town is through you as the fellow who's doing marketing to the community, correct?
Right. Well, it was that, plus I came to the conclusion years ago that if I wanted to talk to the people that mattered in a community, I'd look at the executive directors for the charities that are in the community, right? Mm-hmm. So I did that. I went to One Kid's Place. I went to the hospital. I went to Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I went to CAS. And I said, this is who we are, and this is what my model looks like. And we want to be able to help kids in need. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. Not sending somebody to France to play in a chess tournament, but if you've got kids that are in need, we'll sit down and we'll put together a program that'll help address that need and then move forward from there. So unless we have a model that says this is the way we have to go, I get requests every day. Mm-hmm. Right? Could you support us with this? Could you support us with that? Sometimes it's a yes. Sometimes it's a maybe next year. Sometimes it's a no, that's not quite what we do.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can't do it for everybody. So it was me going around. I went back and I rejoined Rotary. And I went and I started talking to people. And it's just talking to people having coffees that give you an opportunity to have discussions that are meaningful and pertinent. So that's how I got re-engaged in the community.
And that's what makes it the best job in the world.
Absolutely. I get to sit down to people and drink coffee. Good coffee, by the way. I get to sit down. I should have brought one. Next time, I'll bring coffee next time. So it's an opportunity to sit down and say, this is what our belief is. This is how we walk. This is how we talk. We've just finished a program where we've donated over 1,000 Egg McMuffins and 1,000 coffees to the hospital staff over the last 2 years, where we would go and deliver on a certain day, and our last was it's called a Givings Tuesday, and we would drop off. We dropped off, this last run was 200 Egg McMuffins and 200 coffee. So we look for opportunities to have a positive impact in a community as opposed to cutting checks for hundreds of thousands of dollars, because I would never get that by the boss, right? Yeah. It's just, it doesn't meet our criteria.
Now, there are corporations, including yours, that do a lot of work in the community. How important is it for you to take advantage of social media to talk about the programs?
It's funny. I'm not a big social media buff, nor is Colin, but I was put in touch with a lady out of Montreal who works for McDonald's, who's a social media expert, and we sat down and we started to build. And as we started to build, I could see that we were significantly behind the 8 ball when it came to what we were doing, right? From there, we're fortunate that Colin's wife, Vanessa, is very bright when it comes to design and stuff, along with a lot of other amazing skill sets. And Vanessa's taken over the the marketing, and it's worked out really, really well. So yeah, it's critical. You can see that there's some changes. For example, if we take a look at technology and making food orders, we can see that as we continue to develop, we have programs now where we're offering bonus points. We have programs where we're offering a wide variety of other things. And it's just all based on technology. And what it does is people say, well, yeah, but you're doing this to let go of people. And my answer is no, we're not doing this to let go of people. We're doing this to keep people engaged within the restaurants where they can have conversations, where we can have one-on-ones, where my staff can visit and sit down and chat. I have a group of regular coffee fiends every morning, and they go from 9 until about 10:30 every day. Every day. Same people every day. And all of the restaurants have this little clutch of people that kind of get together. And
most of them are retired, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. But still, we're having a visit and we're chatting and visiting and stuff like that. So it's interesting to be able to set those groups up and continue to visit with them. Like if I miss a day, I hear about it. Where were you yesterday? Sorry, I slept in.
You were taking time off, weren't you? Where do you go from here? You're doing this now. You're enjoying it.
I'm doing this, and as long as I can do it properly and enjoy it, so I'm not making a mess of things, I'll keep doing it for as long as I can. I have some very structured events I need to do, and as long as it's labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can do that. Or we can set and look at where our target's going to be for this year, how we can improve. As long as I'm adding value, feeling engaged, and that key is engagement, which is one of the reasons that I started to work for Hospice Kingston, is that I wanted to be engaged in what was going on and not just sit back and watch TV.
So, have you spent any time thinking about conventional retirement?
No, really. I don't see it as something I'm going to... I think what's probably going to happen is my son's going to come to me and says, Dad, I think it's time you retired. We need to show somebody else what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. My job is to make his job easy, right? So whatever he wants to do, it's okay with me because he was the guy that cut the check when we started the business or when he started the business.
Yeah.
If I say we, I do it with pride, not with I had anything to do with it because I didn't. That'll happen. I have some physical issues that make getting around a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But as long as they call me Mr. Happy at the office because I'm always in a good mood, always looking to have some fun, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And as long as I can be effective in terms of doing what I'm doing, continue to contribute towards that environment and be engaged in the community, I'll do it for as long as they let me.
Great. All the best to you going forward. Enjoy the conversation. Great to catch up.
Thank you, David.
Our guest in this episode was Dan MacWhirter, now serving as Regional Marketing Specialist for the McDonald's franchise in North Bay, Ontario.
The theme music for the podcast is Stace's Oasis, written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of the episodes, please send a note to the KingstonianPodcast@gmail.com. For details on upcoming guests, follow us on Facebook. The Kingstonian Podcast is hosted by Dave Cunningham and produced in Kingston, Ontario, Canada.